Welcome to Breakthrough Success. I'm your host, Marc Guberti, the content marketing expert, bringing you 5 new episodes every week where I and top-level guests teach you how to take your business to the next level and achieve your breakthrough. Hello, Breakthrough Success Sisters. I just wanted you all to know before the episode actually starts, I've been working a little bit behind the scenes to give you something really special. So a while ago, I wrote my book, Content Marketing Secrets, which helps people create, promote, and optimize their content for growth and revenue. And I just put the finishing touches together to offer that for free to anyone who is interested. So if you want your free copy of Content Marketing Secrets, all you have to do is head over to marcguberti.com/book. Now, let's jump right into the episode. There are so many different ways to market our brands and grow our audiences and put our content in front of the right people. But when it comes to growing our audiences, content marketing may be one of the most powerful ways to grow our brands and to attract more people to what we're doing. So that's why we're going to have a deep dive into content marketing. And today's guest is going to give us a lot of great insights. He's actually the director of marketing at Buffer, the social media management tool for brands, agencies, and marketers. And through his content, today's guest shares everything he knows about startup marketing, management, and leadership. And we're going to be throwing a link to his blog soon. I do recommend you guys check that out. But today's guest for episode 208 of the Breakthrough Success podcast is none other than Kevan Lee. Kevan, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Marc. This is exciting. I'm glad to be here.
Kevan, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I mean, you share a lot of awesome insights on your blog, kevanlee.com. Couldn't spoil the interest why we had to hold off on mentioning it, but Kevan Lee,
thank you.
There's an A instead of an I in Kevan. That's how, if you want to check out his blog, that will be in the show notes. But I would like to get into using content marketing to grow our brands, getting people to see our content. But can you give us some background story into what attracted you to Buffer and what it's like being the director of marketing for Buffer?
Yeah, absolutely. So Buffer is a social media management platform. So you can come and sign up with us and we'll help you plan and organize and analyze your social media marketing. And we also have a social media engagement tool so you can stay in touch with your audience on social media. And I started using Buffer when I worked at a previous job as just a in-house marketer. It was a very traditional office job. And Buffer was a great tool for us. And as I got to know the company a bit more, I found out all these cool things about it. The company culture was really amazing. It really resonated with the things that I aspire to be and do in my life. The nature of the work that they do, Buffer was very transparent and a remote company, so people could work from wherever in the world they were happiest and most productive. Those things really appealed to me as well. And yeah, at that time in my life, I was just in one of those seeking phases of life where I knew the skills that I had and the skills that I enjoyed and wanted to keep pursuing, and content and writing was definitely my primary skill. And so I saw that Buffer had an opening for a content writer and I went for it. I applied and started networking and just getting as many work samples out there and as much experience as I could. And fortunately, everything worked out great. And so I came on as one of the first content writers at Buffer. And the team was small when I joined. We were about 17 people. And now we are about 75. So I've grown along with Buffer and just had the opportunity to grow my role at the same time. I've tried lots of different things and held lots of different roles. And now I lead a team of, there's 10 of us total now. So a team of 10. And it's great. So my day-to-day is not so much writing anymore. It's a lot of one-to-one meetings and conversations. It's helping others with career conversations and their role and their fit and talking about strategy and vision for marketing and for Buffer. So it's much different work than when I started, but it's work that I enjoy quite a bit.
And it's you're in a role where you're doing a lot of talking with people who they're doing the work and you're overseeing everything and you're giving a lot of feedback. And one of the things I always wonder about a company like Buffer that has like millions of users and it already seems to be one of these top go-to social media tools is that with an audience and brands like Buffer, how does like Buffer, for instance, continue to grow, continue to attract more users? Like once you grow like so much, like how do you continue to attract more and even grow at a faster pace?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. It's one that I've been fortunate to kind of see the evolution of it over time. So we used to get a lot of just general awareness through our blog, and it started when I joined. We were maybe around 200,000 visits a month, and now we're up to 1.5 million. So just growing the size of the blog has been huge for us. It's been a lot of SEO that drives our traffic now. About 80% or more of our traffic comes from search. So that's been a huge moment of awareness for us. Just when people are searching for social media advice, they find our blog, then they find the product after finding our blog. So that funnel there works really well for us. Overall, though, I'd say in terms of user acquisition, our biggest sources are word of mouth. And we measure that by people who sign up by coming directly to Buffer, which can mean typing it directly into their address bar, so buffer.com. So they've heard about us before and they'd go directly to us to check us out. And then also through search is one of our biggest drivers of acquisition. And that means we don't do many search ads or anything like that. So it's a lot of organic search, people searching for Buffer or social media solutions and finding us that way. And so again, that word of mouth component. And it really builds a flywheel for us. So you have people who use Buffer, who love Buffer. They tell their friends when their friends are ready for a social media solution, they know to come to Buffer first. And then we do our best to kind of capture that intent and capture that part of the customer journey by delivering a good experience to those folks when they come. We've tried a bit of manual marketing, I guess, in a way of trying to boost acquisition. And some things have worked, some things were still a bit early on. So we've tried ads. We have a pretty big PR strategy that works well for us. So that gets our name out into other spots. And yeah, I'd say we're not super traditional in our marketing setup. We don't have like a really process-oriented demand gen side of our team. We do a lot of content, a lot of delivering value to customers and audience, and then we trust that the value that we deliver will pay off in growth for us.
And you mentioned that SEO accounts for 80% of Buffer's traffic. I'm wondering if you could go a little bit more into detail about what Buffer's doing on the SEO end to optimize their posts and the website to perform so well on search engines.
Yeah, it's a weird, crazy science behind it. That's for sure. So we don't have an in-house SEO person. We don't have an expert on our team. We don't use consultants or anything like that. The steps we do for new blog posts is that we use the Yoast WordPress plugin, which encourages you to write a good headline and description for search and make sure the post is optimized for search. And it's very straightforward, easy to follow. So we run through that every time we publish something new. We choose the post that we want to write based on keywords. To some degree, we also write thought leadership and more just kind of fun entertainment and case study type stuff. But when it comes to keyword content, we will search for keywords with a high volume, keywords that relate well to our product and what we can help folks with. And so we'll write posts about that. And then we do go back and refresh our old content every so often to make it more relevant and accurate for today. So we'll have, I've been at Buffer for 4 years now, and I started as a writer. So some of my very old content, I'm grateful that it did well, but we do end up going back and updating those ones. And then when you update them, you can, change the date so that it's more recent and the content is fresh. And so you can kind of republish those. So all those elements have really driven SEO for us. I think the size of the blog, the longevity of the blog, we have a really good domain authority and page rank. So it seems unfair and we're very grateful for it. But whenever we publish something new, we have a pretty good chance of ranking pretty well right off the bat with it. We try to interlink our key tentpole cornerstone content. We try to have like a hub and spoke model where we have a hub piece of content, like maybe it's a guide to Instagram marketing, which is the key one. And then from there, we link to that piece of content from all these satellite pieces. So how to schedule on Instagram, how to do a carousel on Instagram, like all these other how-tos that are somewhat related to Instagram. They link back to this main Instagram marketing article, and that drives SEO and search for that main Instagram article. And so it's a host of different strategies, but so far they've all kind of accumulated into some good results for us.
And that is a really great strategy to update content and link to your existing content. Also, outbound content works as well, because you're sending signals to search engines that you're linking to influential sites as well. But I would like to shift back to your blog, because I saw there are a lot of good pieces of content there. One thing that really caught my eye was the Netflix method of online content, where you talk about how you want to make your content more bingeable and even release a lot of blog posts all at the same time, which tends to be against the common advice of being consistent once a week, once a whatever, but not 10 blog posts all on the same day. So yeah. I'm wondering if you could talk about the Netflix method and some of the other trends and changes that you think we should pay attention to in content marketing, or could become very important.
Yeah, thanks for researching into that one. You explained it really well. So it's basically observing the model that Netflix has put out there and seeing that, this is content that it's a topic that people are interested in. They want to know as much about it as possible. Like, why would we hold off on doing a 3-part series over the course of 3 weeks on a blog when we could just do it all at once and capture those folks and deliver that value all at once? So yeah, the idea is if you have a bunch of stuff stored up, just publish it all at once into kind of a season or a series, and people can read it at their leisure and when they're ready for it. So that's something that is a very early idea for us. We haven't actually tried it yet. I tried it myself personally. I did a series of email onboarding breakdowns, where I went through onboarding series from other companies and just talked about what I liked and what I didn't, and where opportunities for improvement. And I started doing a couple, and I was like, I'm going to do 10 or 12 of these. I might as well get them all done and publish them all at once, because that's very similar content, very similar style. So the thinking was that if people like the first one, they'll probably like the rest, and might as well give it to them all at once. So we'll see if that Netflix style actually comes into being with content marketing. It's probably a bit early to tell. But some of the other trends we're noticing, this might be somewhat related to the Netflix model. There's a new article I think it was on Digiday just the last week or so, talking about the New York Times email newsletter strategy. And they're doing some short, compressed with a constrained end to them with their email newsletter. So for instance, one of theirs is a summer tips email newsletter, where it starts now and it ends at the summer. And so people are signing up knowing that they're not making this super long-term commitment that, now I'm on this email list forever. It's a very defined time frame in which they'll receive email. And that constraint is working kind of well for them. So that's one cool way of doing it. I think another trend in content that we're hoping to explore a bit more is audio. And I know audio and podcasts are kind of conflated sometimes. I think audio in this case can mean just a different way of delivering the content that you're putting out. So we write the blog post, and we also do an audio version of it, and we embed that audio version at the top of the blog post, so within the blog post itself. And so far we've gotten some pretty good numbers on that. We have maybe 10 to 15% of visitors playing the audio when they get to the page and listening. We have a pretty good retention rate on the audio, so maybe 85% make it halfway through or further. So we've seen some good results from that so far. And I think the audio is kind of a signal that people are anxious and eager for different types of delivery of content. So we specialize on our Buffer blog in long form content. That's been kind of our bread and butter, which has been good for search also. Now we're starting to branch out and explore some other ways to deliver content to people. So we have the audio versions of posts. We're starting to experiment with a bit shorter of posts and less evergreen. So it's more about how we have one specifically about how the Miami Dolphins are using video on Facebook as part of their strategy. And it's not an evergreen article. It might not be relevant a year from now, it's much shorter. It's maybe 1,000, 1,500 words. But we're trying to tell more stories and be more engaging that way. Maybe even moving a bit more toward a publication or like an online magazine kind of style versus a traditional blog. And I'll throw one more trend out there that we've seen and are hoping to explore too. It's this idea of playlists. And the Help Scout, I don't know if it's I don't think it's their blog. I think it's their library or their resource center, but they're combining these different help resources into playlists that are around a common theme. So in our case, it might be a theme around Facebook marketing, and similar to the Hub and Spoke, but let's say for this case, it's a playlist. So Facebook marketing, we have written 10 articles about Facebook marketing. And rather than having to search and navigate your way through all the blog archives to find them, we've collected them all in this one place, this one playlist. And it's similar to like how popular things have been on Spotify with playlists, and how you can make these collections of related articles that then people can consume all at once and kind of binge in that way. So I guess to bring it back around, there's a Netflix style, there's a Spotify style, there's lots of styles in between, and we're eager to explore all of them.
Kevan, thanks for sharing some of those trends. And I like how you bring up Netflix and Spotify as examples. I mean, there are a lot of people who they may not be coming out with film or may not be releasing new music, but those are still content. Netflix produces a lot of content. Spotify is based on content. So even though it's not blog posts, the way that consumers are changing, that is still happening, and it affects content in general. Even if you're not a singer or you're not creating film, it affects blog posts, videos. So I see how like using Netflix and Spotify as examples, I mean, that's still content, and people are engaging with that content and getting into the flow of receiving content in that format. But none of that really matters if we're not consistently creating content, because it's really hard to market content if you're not creating it. And to follow the chicken and the egg, it's really hard to grow if you're not marketing the content. So how can we get into the habit of creating and marketing content every day?
Ooh, that's also a good one. It's tricky, especially if it's not your full-time job, because doing content well takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of time and energy to really sit down and write something that will stand out and will be useful to people. And if you're doing that plus, 10 or 15 other jobs in marketing, it can be tricky to prioritize enough time to do it right. So I was lucky when I joined Buffer, that was my full-time job. So I don't know if you're listening and you're thinking about hiring folks to do this work, or if you're personally just wondering how to organize your time and your day so that you can do this effectively. I'd say that it takes some dedicated time and focus to do it right. So if you can carve out chunks of time, that's great. If it's your full role, even better. One thing that was super helpful for me early on, because I would write I think I was writing 5 posts a week, so one a day in my prime. So it was 5 like 2,000, 2,500 word posts, each five a week, so one each day. And it was my full-time job, so that was why I was able to do that. I think other folks might, 2,500 words might be once a week or even once a month in some companies. But what was helpful for me is I had this process of batching, which was super useful. Or at least in my case it was. So it was a 3-part process. The first stage was research. The second stage was kind of writing the first draft. And my drafts, when I write a draft, I write the whole thing. So it's basically the first version of the full post. And then the third step is the editing, the refinement, and then getting it ready to ship. So 3 steps, and then I would do 1 step each day. So I'd do research on one day, I would do the first draft on the second day, and I would do the final edits on the third day. And that spacing was nice because I had some, it was maybe 24 hours, but I had at least some hours between the time where I wrote it for the very first time and I edited it. Sometimes when I am in a crunch, I'll write it, edit it right after that, and then ship it right after that. And that's not like the best. It doesn't let things simmer very long. So I ended up doing this 3-day process. But the nice thing about that is then I could overlap the next post behind that. So I would research one post, I would write the first draft of another post, and I would finalize the third post. So I was working on 3 different posts each day, 3 different stages each day, but each day I was able to finish one post. And so it was almost like like an assembly line, just like get them out the door. So there's some ways you can organize your day and your time to really make that process effective. And then when it comes to promoting and marketing the content that you're putting out there, it's interesting. I've heard it said that you should spend half your time writing and half your time promoting. And I do think that can be very true for early blogs that haven't quite got the traction that they want just yet. For instance, on my personal blog, I really enjoy writing on there. I don't spend much time promoting it. And I think having a closer 50-50 balance would help, like numbers wise, with that kind of stuff. I think for the Buffer blog, we're very lucky that when we publish something, we already have some mechanisms in place that help promote that content. So primarily that is through social media. We publish something and then we share it on social media multiple times, and we do that through the Buffer product, which is great. So we can, once it's published, we can go into Buffer and schedule out a number of different tweets and Facebook posts and LinkedIn updates that are about that blog post. And then the second one is that we have a MailChimp email list that has gotten quite large. And so we send a daily or however often we publish email out to that list, letting them know that a new piece of content is up there. And in terms of growing that list, we have a lot of different tactics and strategies over the years. But it's up to maybe 80 to 100,000 now. And so we have a good base to build off of whenever we publish something new from there.
And I really like how you have the marketing flow for Buffer. Like when you publish a piece of content, a lot of the marketing is handled because of Buffer's influence for search engines, the way the social networks are set up, and then just sending the email to your email list. So for anyone listening to this show, it's great to have a plan for how you're going to promote each piece of content you create, and then it's easier to get the traffic and get the sales. But Kevan, I'm wondering if you could share with us, what do you believe holds most content creators back from growing massive audiences around their content?
Ooh, probably like patience. Maybe that's not you probably don't want to hear that answer, but I do think growing big audiences takes time, and it does take patience. You have to trust that you're putting out good content. If you're putting out good content, the audience will come. It just might take a while to get there. For us, it took, our Buffer blog has been around for 7 or 8 years now. And so we're in a very lucky spot where we have this history to build on. If you're jumping into content marketing and looking for results in the first 3 months, it's just not reasonable to expect that. If you need short-term results, you should go somewhere like social media. You can maybe look into Medium. Medium could be an option for a bit faster virality or traction with content. But then again, you don't own it, and there's drawbacks. There's pros and cons. If you're truly starting out blogging and looking to do your own thing, just be patient. It's worth it, but it might take a while to get there.
And patience is definitely something that it is a virtue. You do have to success doesn't happen overnight. You could grind a little harder if you're not as patient, but just having that combination of hustling really hard, being willing to be patient. But if you hustle really hard, things can happen faster for you. Each scenario is different, but throughout any journey, there are going to be certain challenges that we face along the way. And with that in mind, Kevan, I'm wondering if you could share with us one big challenge you faced in your journey as a content creator and marketer, and a powerful lesson you learned during that challenge.
Yeah, I'll share. I think a couple of them come to mind. The first is around fatigue and maybe early signs of burnout, perhaps. When you're writing a lot of content and producing it all the time, I've noticed that it kind of ebbs and flows, where at least for a long time, it's great and super exciting. And maybe there's a point where you start to feel, I need a couple of weeks of something different. I need a break from that. And so you have a little dip, and then you can go a while longer and it's great. And then another dip. And after a while, the dips start coming more frequently, and the good times aren't quite as long anymore. And that can be a sign of a lot of things. It can be a sign that maybe you're not cut out to do content marketing for your whole life, or maybe the topics themselves have been, you've talked about everything there is to talk about. Maybe it's time to pivot the blog. There could be lots of different reasons for it. I think for me personally, when I was feeling that, I had maybe done a year and a half straight of just, 3, 4, 5 blog posts every week. And I think I felt like there were no new ideas to talk about. I was like, I don't really know what else to do. And it was helpful for me to reach that point and to realize that that's okay to feel that way, that to reflect back on all that I had done earlier and to appreciate that effort and to take some time to just rest. So I probably took a week or two and gave myself some grace that I didn't have to keep up my same pace for those couple weeks. And when I came back, I had this different perspective on things where I think I had explored all there was to explore in the way that I was exploring it. So I had a very particular way of coming up with blog post ideas. And I realized, there's other ways to come up with ideas. And having gone a different route, it did open up a lot of other possibilities to me, which was awesome. And then the other example I was thinking of, we did an experiment on the blog maybe three years ago where we didn't write any new content for a month. And, this was after writing 3 to 5 pieces of content a week. So, 12 to 20 articles a month. And we did nothing new for a whole month. And our traffic didn't drop at all. And so it was great. I was super thrilled with that result, but it also put things into perspective for me also of really understanding why, not understanding, but making me reflect on why I felt I needed to write so much and why we have the cadence that we have and what's the value of this. Is the content that we're writing so ephemeral that it's just out into the world one day and gone the next? Like what are we doing here? So that's been a really good learning experience for me of really understanding the why behind the content that you're producing and understanding how it's consumed and hopefully it creates a better content ecosystem for you. Maybe saves you from the pressure to perform so often.
And can you just go into a little more detail about that when you guys decided to not publish a new blog post for the entire month, like the traffic increase when you started to create more content, or did you just see like a similar trend for when you created content versus when you didn't create content?
Yeah, I think since so much of our traffic comes from search, it didn't really matter what the new stuff we were publishing in that month. And so during the course of that month, we chose, I think it was August, so a summer month, which is traditionally a bit of a slower time for us anyway. So we chose August, and during the course of August, traffic did not go down. It didn't necessarily grow by leaps and bounds like it did in previous months, but it didn't go down, which was the constraint of our experiment. So what we didn't end up doing, though, was tracking a few months ahead and seeing, we looked at the numbers, but we didn't tie it back to the experiment. If in a few months, do we now have less evergreen SEO content to pull from since we didn't publish anything new that month? And we didn't necessarily look at that. The numbers didn't show anything different. So I think we have enough cornerstone content and heavy hitters in our archives that those little blips don't really show up too much. So what we learned from it is that we don't have to be producing content just to be hitting this certain cadence, because it doesn't actually, the cadence isn't what impacts our traffic. Our traffic is not reliant on timely trending content. Our traffic is reliant on helpful how-to guides and big resources that are evergreen that will deliver value to people long-term. And so that's then the mindset shift, is we want to focus more on writing those things. We can write those things by a certain cadence, but we're more beholden to the type of content that we write than the frequency at which we write it.
That's really interesting. I'm thinking about that right now with the content creation. A lot of it, like, if you consistently create, you may not consistently publish all the time. Maybe like August, as you mentioned, is a slow month. You may want to save your content for the more dominant months, and you may like the Buffer blog, my blog, others. As you write more blog posts, you can have thousands of blog posts for people to go through. So that's it's very interesting to ponder that. But yeah, are there any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's I want to say it's like similar to the Netflix idea and maybe the Spotify idea. It's just these. I think the ultimate, the big takeaway for me is how important it is to understand the user behavior in general across all content. And that's like, TV watching, podcast listening, blog reading, internet messing around, like any way that people in general behave with content. Then also understand the specific way that people interact with your blog. So the Buffer blog is a certain way because of the type of content that we write and the type of traffic that we get from search and how long we've been around. If you're starting a new blog, your audience is going to be very different. They might be much more driven by maybe email subscription. And so you're really focused on that. And it doesn't really matter the cadence that you publish at or when you publish. If they're coming to your blog from email, like that is the push-pull mechanism. It's not that they're coming directly to your blog every Monday because they're expecting something new there on a Monday. I think the podcast is interesting. Like you have 200 plus episodes in the archives. And I think to a degree you could say, oh, you can maybe not publish podcasts for 3 or 4 months and just resurface the old content from the archives. But I think podcasting works in such a way that, people, maybe they check their iTunes podcasts app and every Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday and see, oh, there's a new episode from Marc this week. And maybe there's one, they're used to that cadence. So I think understanding that is important too. So yeah, overall, I think it's useful to question user behavior and test user behavior and learn about it, and then build your strategy or cater your strategy to what your audience is asking.
And I really do like that approach. It's something that I'll be testing out. Like I haven't been blogging as much lately because I've been doing other things, but I haven't really noticed a drop in traffic. So that's why I wanted to pursue this a little further. And I really like the idea of learning by doing, like in your Buffer's case, like not creating any more content for all of August. And one of my other favorite ways of learning in addition to doing is to read as many books as possible. So with that in mind, I'm wondering if you could share with us 3 books that you believe will have a positive impact on us.
Oh yeah, I could share a lot. That's a good one. I want to hear your 3 books too. I'm always up for new ones. Okay, my 3. My very favorite book is Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. It's ostensibly it's a book about writing advice, but I find that there's so much great life advice in there too. So that's one of my very favorites. Let's see. One book that's been, I don't even know if you can count it a book, but it's the archives from the Pmarca blog, which is Marc Andreessen's blog about startup life and marketing and business building and things. And you can get it for free online. It's Pmarca, Pmarca, and it's his blog archives. There's some really wonderful advice in there about careers. So how to start how to go and how to choose a career path and how to grow in your career and things like that. Also how to hire people. So I found a lot of good wisdom in that. Let's see. I read a Seth Godin book that I liked quite a bit called We Are All Weird, which was great. And for tech startups, there's a really interesting book called Crossing the Chasm, and it's about how businesses grow and thrive. And it's this bell curve basically where in order to get to the kind of the meat of the bell curve, the big part of it, you have to cross this chasm from, I forget exactly the phrasing, but it's maybe from like early adopters to this significant group of users. And there's some advice in there about how to, how to cross the chasm. And it just helps give voice and words and language to this startup and business building journey that you're like, why is everything so hard right now? And the book tells you, it's because you're at this stage and it gets easier next and things. So it's a very reassuring book.
Kevan, thank you for sharing those books. Those will be markguberti.com/E208. I'll give 3 book recommendations as well. Take the Stairs by Rory Vaden, Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, and Rise and Grind by Damon John. Those will be my 3 book recommendations. All of those will be in the show notes. Again, markguberti.com/E208. I did have to think about that one because I never really had the follow-up, but
oh, sorry to put you on the spot.
oh,
Those
no,
are good ones.
I like that. You made me think about book recommendations. And speaking of book recommendations, the book I always love to promote on the show that I hold dear because I know the author more than anyone else. If you guys want my book on how you can create, promote, and optimize your content for growth and revenue, you can grab your copy of Content Marketing Secrets over at markguberti.com/books. So we'll throw a seventh book in there in addition to all the other books that we've covered. But one of the things I want to ask you before we wrap up this episode is I've asked you several questions throughout our time together, but what do you believe is one question that we need to be asking ourselves more often?
Oh, okay. So from that Lamott book, there's this quote that has been very important to me, and it goes, give freely because there will always be more. And I love that quote, and I love that idea, and it resonates a lot with Buffer's emphasis on transparency. And so I think a question that would be fun for folks to think on is, why would I not share this? Or like, what would hold me back from sharing this? I think it's something that I try to remind myself of quite often. So question whether or not I can share this, or why wouldn't I share this? And oftentimes there's no reason not to share it. And I think having that default to transparency is really, it's been amazing for us. It's how I come up with most of my blog ideas on my personal blog. It's how we come up with a lot of ideas on our Buffer blog. It's how we built a whole brand around transparency. So I think there's wonderful things that will come if you ask yourself that question. And if when you answer that question by saying there's no reason not to share, then take the next step and share it. I think great things will come.
Kevan, thank you for sharing with us that great question, all of your great insights throughout our time together. If you want to learn more about Kevan, he is the director of marketing at Buffer, so definitely check Buffer out. But also go to kevanlee.com, Kevan Lee.com. He has a lot of interesting articles about content marketing. You'll learn a lot just by going on his blog and reading his content, but that will be in the show notes. But once again, Kevan, I can't thank you enough for sharing all of your great insights with us. It was such a pleasure to have you on Breakthrough Success.
Thank you, Marc. This was great. I appreciate it.
How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn